Good morning, everybody. Jaden Bax here with Avenue Financial from Crossfield, Alberta. Joined as always by my cousin, the guru of mortgages from BC, Michael Parkinson of Dominion Lending Centers out in Campbell River. How you doing, Mike?
Doing really well, Jaden. Good news today. Bank of Canada held steady, no rate increases. People are like,
Yeah,
you
this
know,
well, this is our favorite day, right? We love Bank of Canada rate update day, right? So for for most of my career and a lot of your career, this has been, just kind of the ebb and flow of the market. And so it's kind of a nothing day, nothing that we would circle on our calendar in too much of a think because we weren't too worried
yeah,
about it. But of course, this last 18 months is a whole different ball game, right? So widely expected that the Bank of Canada would hold flat to the rates today. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because they talk consistently about their mandate being to push inflation down to the 2% level. We're not there. We actually, our inflation numbers went up to 3.5%, when it was expected to go up to about 3.2%. What the heck is going on? Why aren't we raising rates if inflation hasn't been beat?
oh, Jay, that's the question of the hour. Hey,
Yeah,
we've been talking about this for over a year now, and they, I mean, they got to see what's happening out there in the real world, and like for people, if you just throw reality in there, if you're out there, boots to the ground, living, the middle class and below kind of lifestyle, you know that things are tough and they're getting tougher. The economy's slowing. All the leading economic indicators are getting weaker. So, I mean, I think they just want to see. I think they've gone too far already, like we've talked about, and I think they just want to sit back and see. But they still got that hawkish stance, saying, "Hey, we're still rate hikes are still on the table for there's two more meetings this year." But they got to say that, right? What are they going to say? Oh no, we're that's it, we're done. We're going to think about start cutting rates now. They want to stop people from spending money.
and
Yeah,
that's exactly what happens if they say this is the last one, and then the next couple of cycles we're gonna start cutting rates. Of course, they're not going to say that because what am I going to do? I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a variable rate mortgage, and with the idea that that's going to go down 3% over the next 2 years, right? So
right, right. It's a narrative that they want. Like, so they're basically trying to do demand destruction by just what they're saying, right? Which is working, and but everybody's responding different. But let's get back to the whole inflation thing you just talked about, sticky inflation. Yeah, that we're going to see that come and go, right? Um, Oil and gas goes up a bit there. Inflation's going to go up some. Government spending is one of the big. We just discussed that before we started here. Like, if there wasn't government manipulation spending, like, things would be a lot different, right? There's still things getting pumped into the system, even though they're doing what's called quantitative tightening, taking money out of the credit system. So they're still boosting up business investment and things like that. So there's still money sloshing around in the system. It's just,
yeah,
yeah. So
it's it's made up. It's made up fairy money is basically what it is, right? But let's
yeah,
talk about some of the stuff in the background that caused them to make this decision. So the major one, of course, would be the GDP numbers that came out.
yeah,
We Bank of Canada was expecting, or maybe it was StatCan, one of the two, was expecting GDP in the second quarter to come in at about 1.5%.
yeah.
The market was expecting 1.2. We contracted by 0.2% in the second quarter of 2023. If you look at the numbers from July, and they're looking worse than that 0.2% contraction. So the third quarter of 2023 is already looking like we're likely going towards more contraction. And so GDP growth in relation to interest rates is one of the hugest laggers out there, right? And so it takes a long time to catch up. So we were at the first rate hike was April of 2022,
Yeah, March.
March, yeah. So we're 15 months out from that
Yeah,
now.
16
Makes
months.
a lot of sense and 1 year out from that first quarter, that second quarter GDP numbers. So it makes a lot of sense that GDP has actually been affected in that way now that we're starting to see these interest rates come through the cycle. The interesting thing about that March hike was that it was a quarter point. Uh, so we still have to see a lot of the data that comes from the half point, three-quarter point, and full point
1%.
hikes that they've gotten, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's we talked about these revisions, and they can take obviously revisions and these lags, but they could take up to 24 months, right? But I think we're going to start to see there's a lot of cracks happening, and this is a global thing, right? It's everywhere. Like look at China, they're a disaster. They're having a real tough go. They're not going to swoop in and save the world economy like they did before. So, it's almost scary in a way what's happening out there, and I don't believe all the numbers. There's so many revisions coming down, like with all these employment numbers, and like they can say one thing and then it's revised later, and it just doesn't make any sense, right? And they're going by the numbers, like they're looking at in the rearview mirror at all the lagging numbers, and they're not looking forward on, okay, things are really contracting. What worries me is that things are going to start to contract, like explode, right? And then so my theory is, Jay, I'm sticking to it, is that we're going to start seeing rate cuts. I think sooner than they've predicted. Like the predictions were mid-time. I think it was mid next year they're predicting.
Yeah, using July, August, somewhere in there.
That's moved up a little bit now, and I think as things get revised over time and things start to break down further, I think we're going to start to see it sooner. Again, no crystal ball. That's just our opinion, and that's my opinion. So.
Yeah, and I'm totally on board with that. One of the really interesting things about some of these numbers that we're looking at, GDP, employment, all of that, they tend to peak up here and then go here, and then all of a sudden it's like that, right? And so like the employment numbers, we're starting to see some cracks there, right? Unemployment is slowly rising. Average wages for Canadians are slowly going down, and some of those revisions in employment numbers are really interesting in that employment hasn't looked good for a little while here. Like everybody is talking about this strong economy on the back of strong employment, and that it's really a little bit of a fairy tale, isn't it? Like the employment numbers, like you said, these revisions are really interesting.
Well, and think about how many people are working two jobs now. I've talked to many people, Jay. Honestly, I was talking to a fellow the other day. He's like, yeah, I had to get two jobs, and my wife as well, just to support our family. It's just so
and try to get them qualified on two jobs. If that person is getting pushed out of their rental and trying to buy a place because they have nowhere else to go, without a 2-year history, you're just not getting qualified on two jobs, right? So how do those people qualify for something that is adequate for their families?
They don't. And then they're stuck, trying to find rentals, and rentals are so high. I know it's a little cheaper in Alberta, but it's creeping up, right? Like it's supply and demand. You can't find places, and then they're demanding all this huge rent. And yeah, it's a tough situation for the average Canadian, that's for sure. And I'm not sure what the solution is going to be, because let's talk about that. Let's talk about housing and building. We just had a good discussion about that before. So why do you think there's not as much building going on right now?
Well, we know exactly why, right? Because right now, when you look at demand for housing in Canada, it is at a level that likely we've never seen in Canada before, between actual immigration numbers in terms of permanent residents, which is 500,000 people a year, non-permanent residents that are on work permits, and students, which could add, I don't know, a million and a half, 2 million more people a year.
Yeah.
All of these people need housing, and please not right now. All of these people need housing, and so there's huge demand. So builders should be going crazy, right? Like they should be building like they've never built before. The issue with that right now is they have carrying costs to build, and those interest rates. Like if you think that your 5 to 6% interest rate for your mortgage is bad right now, you need to look at what the lending rate is for these builders to build the houses. So they have to carry that debt for between the land and everything. It could be a couple of years until they actually see some return on that debt. It's tough to carry that in the current market, eh?
Oh yeah, like so really, Jay, it comes down to interest rates, and interest rates really control things more than people think. It just takes a bit of time to filter through, and we're getting there now. So that's a really good point. And I'm noticing, we talk about this all the time, is people. So the difference between housing here and in the US is that the US have long-term 30-year terms. So why, if someone's paying 3% on their current, why are they going to sell and move and pay 7.5%? They're not going to do that. But here you have terms and you come up for renewal. So you got people coming up for renewal now that are paying 2.5%, 2.8%, and they're jumping to 6.25%, 6.5%. Like that's hitting the wallet hard, right? Like, and then what are they going to do? They're going to stop spending out there in society and in the economy because they can't afford it, because their mortgage just jumped up by $4,000 or $5,000 a month, depending on how much they owe, right? So it's a tough situation there. I really can't see rates. And another thing is government debt's coming up for renewal. Like in the US, how many trillions is coming up for refinancing next year? Like it's just, I don't know how they're going to be able to even afford the debt, because there's less revenue coming in because the economy is slowing down, and then there's higher debts to pay. So it just doesn't, math doesn't work, right? So that's another reason why I really think that, rates have to come back down here sooner than later. I just don't know when. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll always say, I think we're a little bit more pessimistic about the market than the general marketplace would be.
Yeah.
But it's a boots on the ground, talking to people every day, seeing what the reality is, talking to these people that are renewing, and talking to home builders and why they're making the decisions they're making and all that kind of stuff. So, if you're coming up for renewal, having a tough time with it, if you're thinking about, maybe your landlord decided to raise your rent in Alberta, it's much easier than BC, but you decided to raise your rent by an absurd amount, and you need to think maybe it's time to buy a place. If you're in BC, give Mike a call. If you're in Alberta, give me a call. We're happy to talk about shorter term fixed strategies, some variable strategies to hopefully play out of this peak of the market and help you get into a more comfortable place on the way back down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we really never touched on a bit of the bond yield. So let's just a quick before we go, Jay, let's talk about bond yields, bond yields basically were really high, which means fixed rates continue up. They've come back down some, and now they've crept up a little bit. So they're kind of in between. So that just means fixed rates are going to stay high while that happens. But I don't know how long that's going to last. So again, I still think rates will be coming down, early into next year's is kind of what I think. So some of these strategies that Jaden talked about is something that we can at least look at with you, right? We'll show you all the different terms and rates and just give you some ideas on what's available out there. So please give us a call anytime. We're happy to chat with you. And we'll be back next week with some more updates, because things are starting to happen. It's getting real interesting out there. So we'll have a lot more information available to you. So
yeah, we got employment numbers coming out. We got a lot. We're always on top.
That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. Hey?
Yeah. So we'll have some things to talk about next week. So until then, you have a great week, Mike. Everybody else, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys soon.